Every morning she slid almost her whole paycheck across the kitchen table. She kept $11 for the bus. Brianna Nicole is 28, a black woman, a live-in housekeeper in a glass and stone mansion on the mountain. Her mother hands her a list of house needs. Her sister only asks how much she cleared. For 9 years, this is the trade. The man who owns the mansion is Kwon Si-hyuk, Korean, 35. They call him the Quiet One. A black and gray serpent coils up the left side of his neck, its head resting just below his ear. He wears a matte black watch worth more than her family's rent. She scrubs his floors in a black and white uniform. She rides the bus home in it. 2 worlds that were never supposed to touch. Then, on the terrace, he asked her one question. She said yes, on one condition. Her family could never know. So every day she still leaves home in that uniform, pretending nothing has changed. But what she chose to build next, no one at that kitchen table ever saw coming. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The bills were already counted before Brianna set them on the table. She had counted them twice on the bus the night before, once under the kitchen light at 4 in the morning, and now she pressed the small stack flat with 2 fingers and slid it across the wood toward her mother. 6:40 on the stove clock. The apron was already tied. The bun was already pinned, edges laid smooth at her temples the way she did them every single morning. Because a woman who cleaned other people's marble learned early that her own hair could not be a reason for anything. Denise did not reach for the money right away. That was the part Brianna had stopped noticing she noticed. Her mother let it sit there a second, the way you let a dog wait before the bowl goes down, and then her hand came out from the pocket of the floral house dress and covered the bills without looking at them. Grace at the church said the light bill jumped again, Denise said. I paid the light Tuesday. That was last month's light. Brianna picked up her coffee. It had gone lukewarm while she stood there. She drank it anyway. A second piece of paper came across the table now, folded in half, her mother's small, neat handwriting bleeding through the fold. Denise smoothed it open with the flat of her palm and turned it so it faced her daughter, and that gesture too was practiced. The turning, the offering, the little push of the fingertips like she was doing Brianna a kindness by letting her read it. House needs. That was the heading. It was always the heading. Roofman, deposit, Denise's medicine, the good kind, not the generic. Kayla's phone, the account was behind, something for the freezer because a family had to eat, a number at the bottom, underlined once. Brianna read it and set the paper down beside her mug and drank the cold coffee and did the arithmetic she had already done, because she always did it twice, once in hope and once in the way things actually were. I cleared $490 this week, she said. That's most of it, right there under your hand. Most isn't the number, baby. From the couch in the next room, a voice floated over. Bored, half inside a phone. How much did you clear, though? Not a question. Kayla did not look up. The blue light of the screen moved on her face, and her thumb moved, and one long acrylic nail tapped the glass honey blonde wig loose over one shoulder. New white sneakers propped on the arm of the couch that Brianna had paid to reupholster in March. I just said $490. And rents what? Out of that? Rents all of that, plus. Kayla made a small sound, not quite a laugh, and went back into the screen. That was the whole of her sister's interest in the money. How big the number was going in. Never once how it got there. Never a word about the 6 houses a week, the knees on tile, the bleach that had taken the print off Brianna's own thumb 2 winters ago, so that now the pad of it was smooth as river stone. Denise folded the bills once and slid them somewhere into the house dress, and the money was gone the way water is gone into sand. No splash, no trace, simply not there anymore. The hallway floor creaked, one board, the third from the bathroom, and Brianna knew the weight of it before the man arrived. Her father came into the kitchen slow, one hand riding the wall, the stoop in his shoulders a little deeper than it had been a year ago. Faded flannel, muted red gone gray at the elbows. The cross on its thin chain caught the light and let it go. Marcus looked at the table, at the folded paper, at the empty place where the money had been 30 seconds ago, and the man knew that place the way you know a scar, by the shape of what used to be there. "Morning," he said to his daughter. His voice was gravel and sleep. "Morning, Daddy." He did not sit. He stood at the counter and filled a glass at the tap and drank half of it and looked out the window over the sink at the gray street. And Brianna watched the back of his neck and waited for him to say the thing his eyes were saying. He had tired, kind eyes, and they had been trying to say something to her for a long time now. A year, maybe 2. Something that started up in them whenever the money crossed the table and then went quiet again before it reached his mouth. "You eat?" was what he said instead. "I'll eat up there." Denise, from the doorway, sharp. "Marcus, don't crowd the girl, she's got a bus." And the something in his eyes folded itself back down, and he drank the rest of the water and set the glass in the sink, careful, next to his daughter's mug. The only other person in that house who ever put his own glass in the sink. Brianna caught it. She caught it every morning. It was the smallest thing, and it was, most days, the only thing. Brianna set the mug in the sink beside his glass. She ran the tap over both. She washed her own mug every morning, because if she left it, her mother would leave it, and by evening, there would be 4 mugs and a plate, and the pan from the eggs Kayla made and did not clean, and the sink would be a small accusation waiting for her when she came home with her back locked from the day. She dried her hands on the dish towel and reached up to the shelf where the sugar tin sat, and behind the sugar tin, folded into the corner where nobody looked because nobody in that house ever needed to look for money, she kept $11, 2 5s and a 1. She took the 1 and one of the 5s, $6, 3 there, 3 back, the bus. She left the last 5 behind the sugar tin. She always left something behind the sugar tin, because the day she had nothing behind the sugar tin was a day she did not want to meet. "You're leaving already?" Denise said, and now there was warmth in it. Now that the table was clean and the list was handled, the warmth came out easy as anything. "You don't want an egg? I'll eat up there." That was not true. There was no eating up there, not on the clock, but her mother liked to believe the people Brianna cleaned for fed her, and Brianna had long ago stopped correcting the small beliefs that cost her nothing to leave standing. She got her bag, black, worn soft at the strap. Inside it, the folded second uniform, the rubber gloves she brought herself because you did not trust the gloves in a stranger's cabinet, a granola bar she had bought from her own $6 a week ago and not yet let herself eat. "Bring back the good detergent if you pass the big store," Denise said, "the one Kayla likes for her things." "That store's not on my route, Mama. It's 2 blocks. It's 2 blocks the wrong way, with a full day between me and it." Denise's face did the thing it did. The warmth did not leave so much as cool. A pot taken off the flame, still hot at the center, but going. "I don't ask you for much." Brianna stood at the door with her hand on the knob, and she looked at her mother, 54 years old, in a house dress her daughter's cleaning had paid the rent on for 9 years running, and she felt the old thing rise in her chest, the thing that was almost words, and she swallowed it the way she swallowed the cold coffee, whole, without tasting it. "I'll try for the detergent," she said. She stepped out before the next thing could come, because there was always a next thing, and the door closed behind her on the smell of the eggs. Kayla was finally frying, and would finally not clean. The street was gray and just waking. A man 2 doors down was warming his truck, the exhaust white in the cold, flannel and a cap, and he lifted 2 fingers off the wheel at her the way he did every morning, Mr. Ellery from the corner, and she lifted 2 fingers back. That small kindness from a man who owed her nothing was more than she had gotten inside the house she paid for, and she was careful not to think that thought all the way through, because thoughts like that had teeth. The bus came at 6:58. It was late by 3 minutes, and she watched those 3 minutes pass on the stove clock in her head and calculated whether it would cost her the connection at Halstead, and it would be close, and it was always close, and she had learned to walk the last half mile at a pace that kept her from being late without arriving damp, because arriving damp meant standing at the service door of a house that cost more than she would earn in her life, wiping her own forehead before she was allowed to wipe anything else. She paid her $3. She took the seat over the wheel, the one nobody wanted, because it was open and because she had stopped, years ago, needing the seat anybody wanted. Out the window the neighborhood thinned. First, the houses like hers, close together, cars on the grass, then the strip with the check-cashing place and the wig shop and the chicken spot, then the long stretch where the city let go of itself and the road began, very slowly, to climb. 9 years. She let herself have the number on the bus because on the bus, nobody could see her face do anything. She had been 19 when it started, when her father's back went, and the disability came slow and short, and the household simply turned, the way a compass turns, and pointed at her. She had been the one with the steady hands. The one who did not complain. The one who, when the first envelope of money left her hand into her mother's, had felt something almost like pride, almost like being needed, and had not yet learned that being needed and being used share a border so thin you can stand on it for the better part of a decade and call it love. She did the math she never did out loud. 9 years, 50-odd weeks a year, what she had cleared, what she had kept, the number that would have been in an account somewhere if even a fifth of it had stayed with the woman who earned it. She got as far as a figure that made her stomach drop, and then she stopped, because that was the wall she always hit, and past the wall was a place she could not afford to go standing up on a public bus at 7 in the morning. She thought instead about the smooth pad of her thumb. She rubbed it with her forefinger, a habit now, feeling for the print that was not there. There had never been a fight about it. That was the part that sat strangest with her on the long climb. No one had ever sat her down and told her the money was owed. It had simply become the weather of the house, a standing thing, the way the sun came up. Every Friday the envelope, every Friday the list. And somewhere in the 9 years the envelope had stopped being help and started being rent on a debt nobody could name and nobody would call a debt. She had tried, once, 2 winters back, to keep a little more of a good week. She had said the words out loud at that same table. I want to open an account. Just for me. Just a little. Denise had not shouted. Denise never shouted. She had only gone quiet and looked at her daughter the way you look at a stranger who has said something rude, and then she had gotten up and started cleaning a counter that was already clean, and the silence had lasted 3 days, and on the 4th day, Brianna had put the full envelope down, and the silence had lifted like weather, and that was the last time she said the words out loud. She learned. That was the thing about her. She always learned. And what she learned, she kept behind the sugar tin. Her phone buzzed. Kayla, in the group chat that was the 3 of them and never their father. Can you Venmo? The detergent thing. I already ordered it. Ordered it, so it was done. The money already spent in Kayla's head, and Brianna's part was only to make the number in her account match the number her sister had already decided on. She looked at the message a long time. The bus climbed. She did not answer, and not answering felt, for 1 whole minute, like a small forbidden window she had cracked open, and she sat in the cold air of it and was almost happy. Then a second buzz. "What, can you see this?" And then a third, 3 dots, appearing and vanishing, and appearing, her sister typing, waiting, watching to see if the money would land. Brianna put the phone face down on her thigh. She looked out the window at the road going up. She thought about the $5 behind the sugar tin, and how her whole life, when you boiled it down past the houses and the marble and the bleach-smooth thumb, came to this: a woman who cleaned the most beautiful homes in the state and went home to a place where they took her pay flat across a kitchen table, and who kept, of everything she was and everything she made, exactly 5 folded dollars in a corner nobody looked, against a day she prayed would not come and planned for anyway. The bus reached the top of the low grade and paused at the light at Halstead, and across the intersection the second bus, the one that would carry her up into the mountains, sat waiting with its doors open, 3 minutes early for once in its life, holding. She stood before her stop was called. She was already moving toward the doors when they opened. 9 years had taught her that too, to be up and ready before the world told her it was time, so that no door ever closed on her while she was still sitting down. The second uniform was folded in her bag against a day the first one tore or stained, because a woman could not knock at a service door looking like the work instead of the person who did it. She had bought both with her own money, on layaway, at a store across town, and she had never once told her mother the cost, because the cost of the clothes she worked in would have gone straight onto the list as a thing the house had somehow provided. She protected the small facts of her own survival, the way other people protected valuables, quietly, out of sight, behind the sugar tin of her own chest. Her phone buzzed a 4th time against her leg as she stepped down into the cold. She did not look at it. She crossed the intersection toward the second bus with her bag on her shoulder and her apron folded inside it and her uniform pressed close to a body her family had never once asked what it carried. And she stepped up into the open doors, and the doors held, and then they closed, and the bus that would take her up the mountain pulled out from the light and began, without any of them knowing it, to carry her somewhere none of them would be able to follow. The road narrowed to 1 lane past the reservoir, and the driver leaned into the curve without slowing, and Brianna reached up and held the rail above the window the way she held it every morning. Below her, the town shrank into a gray grid. The houses got smaller, the trees got taller. Somewhere down there, her mother was folding a week of wages into a floral dress, and up here, the pines closed over the glass like a hand closing over a coin. She did the thing she always did on this stretch. She took the second uniform out of the bag and pressed it flat across her knees, smoothing a wrinkle that was already gone. There was no reason to. Nobody up the mountain checked her seams. She smoothed it anyway. The habit was older than the reason. The bus reached the last public stop, a gravel turnout with a bent sign and a bench nobody used, and Brianna stood before the brakes finished. 2 other women rode this far, one who cleaned the lodge past the ridge, one who cooked for the Parks in the blue house, and both stayed seated, phones out, still climbing to jobs that ended when the light did. Brianna stepped down alone. The doors sighed shut behind her. The bus pulled off and left her on the shoulder in her flats, in her apron, in the cold that came off the stone even in August. A car was waiting at the turnout. It was always waiting. Charcoal, low, engine already running. Han Jae-won sat behind the wheel with his tablet dark on the passenger seat and his earpiece catching the light. He did not get out to open her door. She had asked him not to, months ago, and he had simply stopped, the way he stopped doing anything she asked once and meant. "Morning," she said, and slid into the back. "He's on the east terrace," Han said. That was all. The car rolled forward before her belt clicked. The private road wound up through a gate that read nothing, no name, no number, just a black panel that knew the car and opened for it. Brianna watched the stone wall run alongside the glass, close enough to touch. The first week she had ridden this road, she had counted the seconds from gate to house. 90. She still counted. It steadied her the way pressing the uniform steadied her. A small sum she could always make come out the same. The house came up out of the trees the way it always did, all at once, as if the mountain had decided to show it. Glass and stone, 3 floors cut into the slope, so that the top floor met the ridge, and the bottom floor hung over air. From the road you saw yourself in it, before you saw through it. Brianna had spent 9 years learning the insides of houses like this, where the good silver hid, which floors showed every footprint, how a woman could be in a room for 6 hours and leave no sign she had breathed. She knew this house better than any of them. She just no longer knew it as a woman who cleaned it. Han let her out at the side entrance, the one under the overhang, and she went in through the mudroom, the way she had the first day and every day since, because the front door was for arrivals, and she had decided a long time ago that she was not going to become an arrival. Not up here. Up here she came in the side and put her bag on the same hook and stood for one breath in the cool dark before the house opened out into all that light. She did not put the bag on the hook this morning. She held it, and she looked down the corridor toward the terrace, where the glass had gone gold, and she felt the thing she felt every single morning at exactly this spot, the thing her mother would never guess, the thing she had promised no one would ever guess. She was glad to be here. Not for the wage. There was no wage. She walked toward the light. 6 months back, she had walked toward the same light for a different reason. It was March then, still ice on the north rail, and she had come up to close the house for the season, while the owner was in Seoul, or so the agency had told her. She had let herself in with the code, and found the house not empty. A man stood on the east terrace in a dark sweater with his back to her, looking at the town the way she looked at it from the bus, as if it were far away and slightly unreal. She had cleaned rooms with men in them before. You learned to move like weather, present and unremarked. She had gone about the shutters. You count, he'd said, without turning. She had stopped with a shutter half drawn. Sir, when you came up the drive, you looked at the gate and your lips moved. He turned then, calm dark eyes, a jaw like something decided, black hair swept back, and along the left of his neck, a serpent, inked in black and gray, its head resting under his ear as though it were listening too. 90 seconds. I've timed it from the camera. You get it right. She had not known what to say to that, so she'd said the true thing. It's a long road. It's easier if I know how long. Most people fill a long road with noise, he'd said. You fill it with arithmetic. He'd looked at her the way no employer had ever looked at her, which was to say he looked at her, not at the uniform, not at the task, not at the space she was supposed to keep clear. What's your name? Brianna, the agency. I know what the agency sent. He'd said it without unkindness. I asked your name. That was the first morning. Kwan Si-hyuk. She had learned the whole of it later, in pieces. The way you learn a country by living in it, rather than by reading the map. That he owned the conglomerate whose logo she'd scrubbed off wine glasses. That men lowered their voices when he entered rooms, and raised them again, too loud when he left. That the town called him the quiet one, and meant it as a warning. She had learned all of that later. That first March morning, she had only learned that he watched, and remembered, and asked the real question instead of the polite one. She had finished the shutters with her back very straight. It was a thing her mother had taught her without meaning to. When a room feels dangerous, don't hurry, because hurry tells the room it won. So she had not hurried. She'd drawn each shutter to the same height, and checked each latch twice, and felt his eyes on her the whole time. Not the way men's eyes usually landed on her, sliding and hungry, but flat and interested, the way you watch a thing you're trying to understand. He'd asked her to stay for coffee that morning, and she'd said no, because she was being paid to close a house, not to drink its coffee, and he had nodded, as if she'd passed something. The next week, the agency had extended the contract. The week after that, extended it again. She'd thought she was cleaning. She'd been getting known. By April, he was finding reasons to be home. By May, he had stopped pretending they were reasons. The morning it changed, they were on the same terrace, and the ice was finally gone from the north rail, and she had brought him coffee, not because it was her job, but because she'd started to want to see his face take the first sip. He'd set the cup down without drinking it. "I'm going to say a thing," he'd said, "and I need you to hear all of it before you move." She'd kept her hands on the tray. "I don't want a housekeeper," he'd said. "I have money enough to keep this house without either of us ever touching a mop again. I want the woman who counts the road. I want you at my table, not clearing it." He'd looked at her steady, no rush in him at all. "Be my woman, not for what I can move for you, for you." The tray had gone very light in her hands, or her hands had gone very strong. She could never afterward decide which. She had wanted to say yes so badly that the wanting scared her, because she knew what wanting cost. She had watched wanting turn into a list on a folded page every Friday of her adult life. Her whole body had wanted to say it. She'd felt it in her hands, in the way the tray had wanted to leave them, in the pull toward the simple word. And she had held still under that pull, the way she'd held still under the shutters, because a woman who had been robbed learned that the moment you want a thing most is the exact moment you're likely to hand over more than it's worth. So she had not said yes. She had said the other thing first, the condition, the one that came up out of 9 years like a splinter working to the surface. "One thing," she'd said, "and it's not a small thing, so don't answer fast." He'd waited. "My family can't know." Her voice had not shaken. She'd been proud of that. Later, alone. "Not who you are. Not that this is anything. Not that I'm anything but the girl who cleans houses up the mountain." He'd studied her. "Why?" "Because the day they know I have access to a man like you," she'd said, "is the day I stop being their daughter and start being their door." She had said it plainly, the way you say a fact you've stopped crying about. "Right now they take what I earn. If they knew what you have, they wouldn't ask for a week's wages. They'd ask for you, and they wouldn't stop, and you'd let them for a while because you'd be doing it for me, and then one morning you'd look at me and see the size of the bill I came attached to. I've watched that look land on people. I won't stand under it from you." The terrace had been quiet a long moment. Down in the town a train had sounded, thin and far. "So the arrangement," he'd said slowly, "is that you become the most protected woman on this mountain, and you go on letting them believe you're the least. Yes, you'll ride the bus. I'll ride the bus. You'll hand your mother money you don't owe her." Her jaw had set. "That part's mine to end when I'm ready. Not you, me." She had heard herself and been surprised by the steel of it. "I'll take you on one condition, and you'll take me on none. That's the deal, or there's no deal." She had braced for him to bristle. Men with houses like this did not, in her experience, enjoy being handed terms by women in aprons. But Kwon Si-hyuk had done the last thing she expected. He'd smiled, small and real, the first one she'd seen on him. "You negotiate," he'd said, like someone who's been robbed before and decided it won't happen twice. He'd picked the coffee up at last and drunk. "Yes, on your condition, and I'll add nothing to it except this. The day you're ready to end the other part, you tell me, and I stand behind you, not in front. Behind? Where you put me." "Behind," she'd agreed. She had almost not believed him. Men said behind and meant in front. She had lived with a woman who said this is for you and meant this is for me. So she had watched him over the following weeks, the way she watched a floor she'd just mopped, waiting for the footprint. It hadn't come. He'd never once mentioned her family after that morning, unless she opened the door herself. He'd never once counted for her. When she came up the mountain heavy from a Friday table, he read it in her shoulders and poured the coffee and said nothing, and the nothing was the gift. And that had been the whole of it. No ring, no announcement, no name spoken into any phone that mattered. A cup of coffee going cold, and a serpent listening at the side of a man's neck, and a woman deciding, for the first time in 9 years, to keep something entirely for herself. She had gone home that night on the bus and put her wages on the kitchen table on Friday, like always, and her mother had covered them without looking, like always, and Kayla had asked how much she cleared, like always, and Brianna had answered and felt, underneath the old flat weight of it, a thing she had never once felt at that table. She had felt like a woman with a country of her own, standing quietly in someone else's, paying the toll and saying nothing, because the border was hers and they didn't know it was there. The strange part was how easy the pretending got. She'd braced for it to be hard, for the double life to press on her chest at the kitchen table. It didn't. What pressed on her was the opposite, how simple it was to keep handing over the notes, now that she knew the handing was a choice and not a sentence. Every Friday she chose it again. Every Friday it got a little easier to imagine choosing otherwise. She hadn't yet. But the imagining had started, and imagining was a door, and she had learned this spring that doors, once you knew they were there, did not close on their own. She'd told no one, not the woman who cleaned the lodge, not Mr. Ellery across the street, not the second uniform folded in her bag, especially not the second uniform. Some secrets you kept by never speaking them. This one she kept by living 2 lives so cleanly that neither could smell the other. The gold light on the terrace pulled her back to now. 6 months of mornings had worn the shock off the memory, but not the thing under it. She set her bag on the hook after all. Old habit, she let it win, and she walked the last of the corridor and came out into the light where he was standing at the east rail, with 2 cups already poured and steaming on the stone. He turned before she reached him. He always heard her. 9 years of learning to move like weather, and this was the one man the weather couldn't slip past. You counted, he said. It was almost a greeting now. 92 today. The gate stuck. I'll have it looked at. He handed her the cup, the one on the left, hers. He didn't ask about the money. He'd learned not to. She'd see it happen sometimes, the question forming and then set down unspoken, and she loved him a little more each time he set it down. Sit with me before the day starts eating you. She sat. Below them, the town lay in its grid, small and gray, and certain that she was down in it somewhere, mop in hand, worth exactly what she cleared. Jae-won found something, Si-hyuk said, turning his cup a slow quarter turn on the stone. About your family, about the arithmetic. His voice stayed level, but his thumb pressed the rim. You should hear it before you decide anything today. Brianna's cup stopped halfway to her mouth. Down the mountain, in a house with a covered pile of notes, her mother was already writing next week's list. Tell me, Brianna said, and set the cup back down without drinking. Si-hyuk didn't reach for a tablet or a folder. He turned his own cup another quarter and let the terrace hold its quiet for a breath. Jae-won pulled 9 years of numbers, he said. Every deposit you sent home, every list your mother wrote. He built a spreadsheet. A pause. The total surprised even him. Behind them, gravel crunched. Han Jae-won crossed the terrace, tablet against his hip, earpiece catching the light. He stopped an arm's length short, the way he always stopped, and waited to be waved in. Say it in front of her, Si-hyuk said. It's her math. Jaewon turned the tablet so Brianna could see it. She didn't take it. She read from where she stood, arms folded, the morning cool against the backs of her hands. Since you were 19, Jaewon said, you've moved a sum through that house that could have bought it twice. Outright. No mortgage. He scrolled. The roof they've asked you to fund 3 separate times was replaced once, in a year you didn't know about. Your sister's phone bill has been paid 19 times. The account you tried to open 2 winters ago would have earned. Stop, Brianna said. He stopped. She looked at the number at the bottom of the column. It was a large number. She had carried every piece of it in her body, $3 at a time, and she had never once seen it stacked. Seeing it stacked was worse than carrying it. Carrying it, she could tell herself it was small. Stacked, it was a house. You cross-checked the roof, she said. It came out flat. Twice, Jaewon said. A contractor named Ruiz, 4 years back, paid in full from a different source. Your mother's cousin, the deposit slip says. You paid the same roof again the following spring. Brianna's thumb found the ridge of her own knuckle, the right one, where the print had gone. She pressed it. She had a habit of pressing it when she needed something that couldn't lie. He kept a copy, she said. Marcus. He'd know about Ruiz. Jaewon glanced at Si-hyuk. Si-hyuk gave the smallest tilt of his chin, and Jaewon stepped back to the edge of the terrace, out of the circle again. Your father isn't in the spreadsheet, Si-hyuk said. Except once. He's the only one who ever put money in. That landed somewhere she wasn't ready for it. She looked at the city folded small below the reservoir and let it sit. Once, she said. How much? Jaewon told her. It was not a large amount. It was the size of a man's careful savings from a body that didn't work right, put in secretly, in her name, and never mentioned. She'd spent 9 years believing she stood alone at that kitchen table. The number said she hadn't been entirely alone. It said one person in that house had been quietly trying to give instead of take, and had done it so softly she'd never heard it. Where's it sitting now? She asked. We couldn't trace it past the deposit, Jaewon said. It went somewhere. It didn't come back out to any account we can see. Brianna filed that away in the place she kept the things she'd deal with later. There were a lot of things in that place now. She was learning that freedom wasn't one door, it was a hallway of them, and every one she opened showed her another she hadn't known was shut. The house ran on people, and by the 2nd week of that month it ran on Grace. Grace Okafor came up the mountain the way Brianna once had. The same second bus, the same gravel turnout, the same walk. Jaewon had found her through the agency, checked her, and put her in front of Si-hyuk, who asked her 3 questions and hired her on the answers. She wore the black and white uniform the agency issued, the same cut Brianna had worn for years. Watching Grace shake it out of its plastic on her first morning did something to Brianna's chest that she chose not to name. You don't have to do the library, Brianna told her that first day, meaning to be kind. I like the library, Grace said. She had a warm, steady face and a way of squaring a room before she touched it. Man's got books in 4 languages, and he's read them. You can tell. The spines break in the middle, not the front. She snapped a dustcloth. You'll be where, most days? Around, Brianna said. Grace looked at her. Not unkind, just clear-eyed. 46 years of reading houses, and the women who clean them. Around, she repeated, and let it go. And that letting go was its own small mercy. So Brianna stopped pretending inside these walls. She still came in the side door, she still hung the bag on the same hook, but the uniform stayed in the bag more mornings now, and the cream dress came out, and she learned the strange weight of walking a hallway she'd once mopped without a cloth in her hand. She was not idle. Idle would have finished her. She sat in on a property meeting the 2nd Thursday, because Si-hyuk asked her to, and because the alternative was sitting alone with the number Jae-won had built. 6 residences across the ridge, the lodge, the blue house the Parks used, 3 others, and the mansion itself. Managers spoke, numbers moved. A woman from the conglomerate's holdings arm read out staging costs for a residence they meant to lease to a visiting executive, and the figure was ugly, and everyone nodded at it, because nobody in the room had ever carried a bus fare in their teeth. "That's high," Brianna said. The room turned. She hadn't meant to speak. Si-hyuk's face gave away nothing, but his hand went still on the table, which she had learned meant he was listening hard. "The linens alone," Brianna said. "You're renting them at that rate? I furnished a whole front room for less than your monthly linen line. I know a warehouse in Halstead that supplies the hotels and eats the return freight." She heard herself and almost stopped. She didn't. "And your staging woman is dressing rooms nobody lives in. You dress a room so a person imagines living in it. That's a different skill than folding a towel to a hotel corner." Silence. The kind that could go 2 ways. "Where'd you learn to dress a room?" the holdings woman asked, and it wasn't friendly. 9 years making other people's houses look like nobody suffers in them, Brianna said. Si-hyuk's hand moved. He picked up his pen. "Get her the linen numbers," he said to the room. "All 6 houses, by Monday." The holdings woman's jaw set. "With respect," she said, "she doesn't hold a position here." "She held a mop here longer than you've held that title," Si-hyuk said, and turned the next page of his folder, and the meeting moved on, and Brianna kept her face still, because the thing rising in her chest wasn't something she wanted a boardroom to read. She'd spent 9 years being the person other people spoke around. She had just been the person a room went quiet for. The 2 things used the same skin and felt nothing alike. Afterward, in the corridor, the holdings woman passed her without a word. Grace was 2 doors down with the tray. She didn't look up, but as Brianna went by, she said, low, "Heard your voice through the wall." A beat. First time I ever heard one of us talk in that room, instead of carry into it. Then she went back to the glass, and Brianna went back to the numbers, and neither of them made it into a moment, which was how they both preferred their moments. That night, that same night, on the terrace, the coffee gone and the lamps low, he made the offer. He didn't dress it up. He was not a man who dressed things up. "I can make the money problem disappear tomorrow," Si-hyuk said. "1 transfer. You never send another $1 down that mountain. Your mother's lists stop meaning anything. You'd be free of it by breakfast." Brianna held the stem of her water glass and turned it, once, the way she'd seen him turn a cup, and caught herself doing it, and stopped. "Free," she said. "Free. And when the roof leaks next spring, I'd handle it. And Kayla's phone, and the medicine, and whatever's on the list I haven't read yet." She set the glass down. "You'd handle it." "Yes." "So, I'd stop belonging to my mother." Brianna looked at him full, the lamplight in her glasses, "and start belonging to you." That reached him. She watched it reach him, a small tightening at the jaw, the serpent's head shifting a fraction as the muscle in his neck moved. He was quiet a long moment. "That's not what I meant," he said. "I know it's not what you meant." Her voice stayed low and even. "I know you'd never send me a list. That's exactly why it's dangerous. My mother's list I can resent. Yours I'd be grateful for." Grateful is a longer leash. She pressed the dead knuckle again. 9 years I've been the thing that pays. I am not trading one man's mercy for a woman's guilt and calling it freedom because the man's kinder. I'm not your mother. No, you're worse, because I'd want to please you. She said it plainly, and it cost her, and she said it anyway. The day I can't buy my own bus fare, I don't care whose account it comes from. I've been dependent since I was a teenager, Si-hyuk. I'm not going to end it by picking a nicer owner. He didn't argue. That was the thing that undid her a little. He didn't argue. He turned it over, the way he turned everything, and when he set it down her way. Then, not money, he said, doors. What does that mean? It means I don't pay for the roof. I put you in rooms where the roof is a line item you invoice for. He leaned forward, forearms on his knees. You were right about the linens. You'll be right about 100 things a woman who's dressed real houses knows that my holdings people never will. I open the door. You walk in on your own feet. If you're good, you're paid because you're good. If you're not, you're not. I don't tilt it. You can't help tilting it. You own the door. I own the door. I don't own the room. A flicker at the corner of his mouth. Not quite the smile she'd seen once, but it's relative. You said behind, months ago. I'm still behind. This is behind. I'm not carrying you. I'm standing where you can't see me, and refusing to catch you. Brianna looked out at the dark shapes of the ridge. Somewhere across it, Grace was probably still awake, learning the house. Somewhere below it, her mother was asleep on money that could have bought this view twice. Say the joke you make, Seahawk said, the one Jaewon heard, about the machine. She almost didn't, then she did, because he'd earned it. The family ATM, she said. That's what I am to them. You put your card in, the money comes out. You don't think about where the machine sleeps. She laughed once, short, no warmth in it. 9 years, and not one of them has ever asked how the machine's doing, only how much it cleared. An ATM breaks, he said. The family calls the bank furious. They don't ask if the machine is tired. No, she said, they don't. Then stop being the machine. He stood and gathered both empty cups, which he was not supposed to do, and did anyway. Be the woman who owns the bank. She didn't answer him that night. She let it live in her for 3 days, the way her mother had once let silence live for 3 days, except this silence built something instead of tearing it down. On the 3rd morning, she came up the mountain and didn't put the uniform in the bag at all. She wore the cream dress from the house. Grace was in the front hall with a cloth. She looked at the dress and at Brianna, and something passed over her steady face that was almost a smile and mostly recognition. There she is, Grace said quietly. Don't, Brianna said, but she was near to smiling too. I mopped for a doctor's family 11 years, Grace said, folding the cloth into a neat square. Woman of the house had a degree in a frame and never worked a day. Used to look at me like I was furniture that moved. She set the cloth on the tray. You never looked at me like that. First morning I came up here, you told me I didn't have to do the library, so I'll say this once and mind my own after. She met Brianna's eyes. Whatever you're standing at the edge of, jump. The mopping'll still be here if you're wrong. It always is. Brianna carried that up the stairs with her. In the library, she spread the linen numbers Jaewon had pulled across the long table. 6 houses, 12 months. A warehouse quote she'd called Halstead to get. She'd done the math the way she did everything, in her body first. How many hands, how many hours, how many bus fares between the warehouse and the ridge. Then on paper, the gap between what the conglomerate spent and what the work actually cost was not a small gap. It was a salary. It was several. She heard Seehyuk in the doorway before she saw him. He'd learned to stand where she could feel him and not perform arriving. I don't want your money, she said, not turning around. I want your contract. Which contract? The linens, staging, the turnover on all 6 houses. When a lease ends, you're paying 3 vendors to do badly what one person who's lived it could do well. She turned then. I'll invoice you, a real number, market rate, maybe under it the first quarter to prove it. You pay me because the work's worth it, and if it's not, you cut me like you'd cut anyone. No gift, No door held so long it becomes a hand. Si-hyuk looked at the papers on the table, then at her. You'll need a name for the invoices, he said. Legal, a company. I have one. She'd chosen it on the third bus that morning, between the reservoir and the gate. Nicole Property Atelier. He said it back to her once, quietly, the way you test a weight before you lift it. Then he nodded. Han will show you how to register it, he said. He won't do it for you. He'll show you. Good. One more thing. He crossed to the table and, for the first time, put his finger on a number. The transfer. The monthly one. The amount that had gone down the mountain like clockwork for 9 years. When the first invoice clears, he said, you'll have your own money. Money they don't know about? That doesn't come from me. That came from your own 2 hands doing your own work. His finger stayed on the number. You could cut this, not to nothing, to what you choose. Brianna looked at the figure that had defined every week of her adult life. Her throat did something. She swallowed it. Not yet, she said. When the first one clears, when it's real. She pressed the dead knuckle a last time, and this time, it felt less like needing something that couldn't lie, and more like promising something to herself. I'll cut it my way, in my time. Behind, remember, not in front. Behind, he agreed. Down the mountain, in a cramped kitchen, Denise Nicole uncapped a pen and pulled a fresh sheet toward her, and began, in her neat protective hand, to write next week's list. The roof man again, the good medicine, a number underlined at the bottom, with no idea that the machine she was writing to had, that morning, quietly begun to become a bank. Han Jae-won slid a single sheet across the library table and waited. Brianna read it twice before she touched the pen. A registration form, state filing. Her name in the applicant box, not his. The line for a co-owner sat empty, and he had drawn a small dash through it so no one could fill it later. You sign, he said. I only show you where. She signed. The pen caught on the downstroke of the N, the way it always caught when her right thumb pressed too hard, the ridge of dead skin refusing to grip. She switched the angle. The signature came out clean. Jae-won took the sheet back, checked the boxes she'd missed, and did not fix them himself. He tapped each blank with the capped end of the pen and slid it back. She filled them. Address of record. She used a mail service in Halstead, not the mansion, not the rented house. Registered agent. Herself. Business purpose. Property staging, turnover, and residential administration. Not linens, he said, reading upside down. Linens is how I get in the door. She kept writing. Administration is why they keep me. Something moved behind his glasses. Not a smile, close. Grace passed the library doorway with a stack of folded towels for the guest wing and slowed half a step when she saw the pen in Brianna's hand and the papers spread wide. She said nothing. She adjusted the towels and walked on, but she looked back once, and in the look was a whole sentence neither of them needed to speak. The first invoice was for the blue house. The park lease had ended. The tenants left the place clean enough to fool a landlord and wrecked enough to fool no one who'd ever turned a house for the next paying body. Brianna walked it with a clipboard and a phone camera. Scuff on the stair nose. A cabinet hinge sprung. 9 towels missing, and 11 that should have been retired 2 years ago and never were, because the holdings account replaced whole sets at retail every single lease and wrote off the old ones like they'd evaporated. She photographed the linen closet. She counted out loud, once, so the number would live somewhere outside her own head. Then she built the invoice. Not a wish list. A bill. Line by line, market rate, with the Halstead warehouse cost, beside the conglomerate's old cost, in a second column, so anyone reading could see the gap without being told the gap existed. Staging fee, turnover labor, linen replacement at wholesale, plus a documented handling margin, administration retainer, monthly, flat. At the bottom she wrote a number. She looked at it a long time. It was not a large number. It was the first number in 9 years that had her name on the earning side of the line instead of the paying side. She sent it to Jaewon for the accounts. He sent back one word an hour later. Approved. She read it on the third bus, standing, one hand on the rail. She did not smile where a stranger could see. She turned toward the window and let the reservoir slide past and pressed her dead thumb against the cold rail until the ridge of it ached, because the ache was proof she was awake, and this was real, and nobody had handed it to her. The Holdings woman fought it. Her name was Ro. She sat at the far end of the Thursday meeting with a laptop open like a shield and read the invoice aloud in the voice people use to make a thing sound absurd by simply saying it slowly. A handling margin, Ro said, on towels. On sourcing, transport, and turnover of 9 residences worth of linens, Brianna said. Yes. We have vendors for that. You have one vendor, at retail, replacing full sets every lease. Brianna slid a printed page down the table, the same 2-column sheet, and let it travel hand to hand until it reached Ro. That's last year. 6 houses. That's the difference. Ro's eyes moved down the column. She did not read it out slowly this time. She read it the fast way, the way you read a thing you're hoping has an error in it, and her jaw set when it didn't. Anyone can undercut a vendor for 1 quarter, Ro said. Then the quality drops, and you come back asking for the retail budget after all. Then hold the retainer until the quarter closes. Brianna kept her hands flat on the table. Pay me on the turnover, not the promise. If a tenant complains about a single sheet, you keep the difference, and I eat the loss. Put it in the terms. The table went quiet. It was the wrong kind of offer for someone to argue with. She'd handed Ro the knife and pointed it at her own throat, and Ro couldn't stab it without looking like she wanted blood more than she wanted savings. Si-hyuk had not spoken. He sat at the head with his coffee untouched and let the room do its own arithmetic. Now he set the cup down. Hold the retainer, he said. Pay on delivery. Ro signs off on quality. Ro looked up fast, caught between winning the safeguard and losing the fight. If she clears the quarter, Si-hyuk said, the margin's hers. If she doesn't, we go back to your vendor and I never hear the word linens again. He stood. The meeting was over the moment his knees straightened. But at the door he paused with one hand on the frame, not looking back at Brianna, looking at Ro. She held a mop in this house, longer than you've held that title. He said it flat, no heat, the way you state a measurement. She knows what the sheets cost because she's the one who used to fold them. Then he was gone down the corridor, and Ro was left holding a page she couldn't refute, in front of a room that had just watched the owner put his weight behind the woman she'd tried to make small. Grace was waiting in the service hall with a tray she didn't need to be carrying. You made her read it twice, Grace said. She made herself read it twice. Same thing from where I stand. Grace shifted the tray to one hip. You know what I noticed? First quarter, she'll watch every towel like a hawk, hoping she wants you to trip. I know. So don't trip. Grace's mouth curved. Fold them like your mama's coming to inspect. Except your mama never inspected, she just took. The word landed harder than Grace meant it to. Brianna felt it go in. She let it. I'll fold them right, she said. She did. She turned the blue house herself the first time, on her knees on a floor she used to clean, for someone else's wage. Except this time, every hour on the clock was hers, and had a number, and the number went into an account with a dash through the co-owner line. She sourced from Halstead. The warehouse man met her at the loading dock and quoted her the hotel rate without being asked twice, because she'd walked in knowing exactly what a case of King Flats should run and hadn't let him round up. She came home that night after the last bus, with warehouse dust on her cream dress and a body that ached in a place that felt like earning instead of erasing. The next morning, she did the thing she had promised herself she would do when the first one cleared. She sat on the third bus with her phone and opened the standing transfer, the one that had run every month for 9 years, the one Denise built her list against before the money ever landed. Roofman, good medicine, a number underlined at the bottom. She did not cancel it. She reduced it. Her thumb hovered. Then she typed a new figure, smaller, chosen, a figure she had decided on the walk to the stop, and not a figure anyone had handed her on a folded sheet. It covered the real bills, the actual light, the actual water. It did not cover the roofman who'd already been paid 4 years ago by someone named Ruiz. It did not cover the medicine that got better every time the check got bigger. It did not cover Kayla's phone for the 20th time. She read the new number twice, the way Ro had read the invoice, hunting for the part of herself that would flinch and put it back. The part flinched. She left the number. She hit confirm. The bus climbed. The reservoir came and went. She pressed her dead thumb to the rail, and this time she did smile, small, at the glass, because the machine had a hand now, and the hand had turned a valve, and the water coming down the mountain would arrive at a pressure she had set and no one else. Down in the rented kitchen, Denise noticed on the 4th. She always checked on the 4th. Brianna knew this the way you know the shape of a room in the dark. The transfer landed on the 3rd by habit, and on the 4th, Denise sat with her reading glasses down on the beaded chain and reconciled her list against the deposit, pen in hand, crossing off what the money covered and circling what it didn't. This month, the circle was bigger than the cross. The phone rang at 6:52 in the morning, before the first bus, while Brianna was pinning her edges at the small mirror by the door. She let it ring twice. She thought about Grace saying, "Don't trip." She answered on the 3rd. "Baby," Denise said, warm, the warm that came before the cold. "There's a mistake with the deposit." "There's no mistake." A pause. Denise recalibrated in real time. Brianna could hear it, the small intake, the pivot from confusion to hurt, because confusion hadn't worked. "It's short almost half. The roofman's coming Tuesday. The roof was done 4 years ago." Brianna kept her voice level, pinning the last edge, watching herself in the glass. "By Ruiz. I saw the paperwork." The silence on the line changed temperature. It was not a guilty silence. Denise did not do guilt. It was the silence of a woman rearranging her hand to find a card that still played. "I don't know any Ruiz," Denise said. Who's been in my business? Who's showing you papers?" And there it was, the pivot to the real fear, not the roof, never the roof. "Who got to you? Who's telling you things? Who put ideas in my daughter's head that she could ever count?" "You've got somebody up on that mountain filling your ears." "I've got a job," Brianna said. "I've got a company. The money that's coming is money I'm choosing to send. Every dollar of it's a choice now, Mama. It wasn't before. Now it is." The word, company, went into the phone and disappeared into a silence so complete that Brianna checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. It hadn't. "A company," Denise repeated, not a question, testing the weight of it, deciding whether to laugh at it or fear it, and choosing, for now, neither, doing what. "Sheets," Brianna said, because Grace had made her love the smallness of it. "I do the sheets." She hung up before Denise could find the next card. She pinned her last edge. She picked up the bag with the folded second uniform she no longer needed and had not been able to make herself leave behind, and she went out to catch the 6:58, 3 minutes late as always, and she paid her $3 and sat over the wheel, and she did not check the group chat that lit up 9 times before Halstead. Kayla's messages she read at the connection, standing, because she'd learned that reading Kayla's messages was easier on her feet. Mom said you're being funny with the money. Bree? We need the phone paid, you know that. So you got a little office job, and now you're better than us. Wow. Okay, wow. This is so you, TBH. Then a voice note, 40 seconds. Brianna did not play it. She could hear it without playing it. The pitch of it. The sob laid on top like an accessory. The way Kayla's crying had always arrived fully produced, ready to post. She let the note sit there with its little unplayed dot and got on the second bus and let the doors close. The thing that surprised her was that it didn't hurt the way she'd braced for. She'd expected to feel the old thing, the drop in the stomach, the reflexive reach for the account, the muscle memory of, how much will make this stop? She reached for it and found it thinner than it used to be. Not gone. Thinner. Like a callus finally wearing off the wrong place. She thought. This is what the $5 behind the sugar tin was for. Not the $5 themselves, the habit of keeping something back, the muscle she'd trained in the dark for a day she prayed wouldn't come, and here it was, and the muscle held. Seehyuk was on the east terrace with 2 coffees. He turned before she reached the top step. You counted. 90. She took the cup. Gates fixed. I heard it was fixed. He watched her over the rim. He did not ask about the phone that had buzzed 11 times on the way up, because he'd learned not to, but he read her shoulders the way he always did, and whatever he read there made him set his cup down on the stone. You cut it. Reduced it. How much did you leave in? Enough for the real bills, nothing for the invented ones. She wrapped both hands around the coffee. The warmth found the dead thumb, and the dead thumb didn't feel it, and she was used to that. She called it a mistake. Then she asked who got to me. She would. Kayla called me a sellout. Brianna almost laughed. In writing, then in a voice note I didn't play. Seehyuk was quiet a moment. When he spoke, it was not comfort. He didn't do comfort any more than Denise did guilt. The first invoice cleared, he said. The blue house passed Rose inspection this morning. 0 complaints. Full margin. He let that sit. You have a signed turnover contract for 6 residences, renewable per lease, on results. Not a gift, a contract. Ro put her own name on the quality line, trying to catch you, and she caught nothing. Brianna held very still. So understand what happened this week, he said. You didn't take my money and hand it to them slower. You built a thing that makes money, and you decided what leaves it. He picked his cup back up. The story they'll tell downtown is that you found a rich man. Let them. The story on paper is that you monetized 9 years of labor they took for free. Paper doesn't care what Kayla posts. The word free did something to Brianna's throat. 9 years of turning other people's houses for a wage, and 9 years of turning her own family's house for nothing, and the 2 had always been the same job to everyone but her. Now one of them had a bill on it. Now the labor had a price, and the price had her name on it, and the name had a dash through the line where anyone else might have tried to sign. I reduced it, she said again, quietly, to herself more than to him. I didn't cut it. Not yet. Not yet, he agreed. Your time, your way. Behind, she said. Behind. She went into the mansion through the side door, out of habit, hung the bag on the same hook, and stopped. Grace was in the guest wing, folding king flats. Same black and white uniform Brianna had worn up this mountain for a year. Same crisp apron. Same discreet collar. Grace folded a sheet in half, then in half again, corner to corner, the way you fold when your mama's coming to inspect, and looked up. You told her about the company, Grace said. She'd heard. Grace heard everything. It was her whole gift. I told her I'd do the sheets. Grace laughed, low, and set the folded flat on the stack. Girl. She's going to make it worse before she makes it right, Brianna said. The reducing. She's going to test where the new number is. She's going to find the softest thing she's got left and press on it. Course she is. Grace picked up the next sheet. That's what it's for, the soft thing. She snapped the flat open, and the linen cracked in the air like a small flag. Question is whether you've still got one she can reach. Brianna looked at the folded second uniform on the hook, the one she'd bought in layaway with her own money and never let become a line on anyone's list, the one she no longer needed and still couldn't leave home without. She thought about the number she'd reduced. She thought about the ones Denise hadn't tried yet, the tears she kept in reserve, the medicine, the grandmother, the thing about family that a bill could never quite settle, because the bill was for the sheets, and the sheets were never what the family had been charging her for. Down the mountain, in the cramped kitchen, Denise capped her pen. She did not write next week's list. For the first time in 9 years, she set the pad aside without a number underlined at the bottom, and she reached for the phone instead, and she began, in a voice she would practice until it was wet, to plan a Sunday her daughter would not be able to walk away from. The call came on a Thursday, and Denise's voice was already wet before Brianna said hello. Baby, I need you to come home Sunday. A breath, ragged, practiced against a mirror somewhere in that kitchen. Not for money. I know how you feel about the money now. Just come. Your grandmother's been asking for you. Brianna stood in the mudroom of the mansion with the bag on the hook, and Grace 3 rooms away folding king flats. She pressed the phone tighter. What's wrong with Grandma? The medicine. Denise let the words sit. But we'll talk Sunday. Wear something nice. Your father's grilling. The line went dead before Brianna could answer, which was how Denise always ended a call she had already won. She stood there a long moment. Grace passed with an armful of linens and read her face without slowing. That the voice or the words that got you? The voice. Then, it's the voice you fight. Grace kept walking. Words you can answer. A voice just wants you back in the chair. Brianna went Sunday. She told herself she went for Marcus, who did not use voices. She wore the cream dress under a coat, and she left the second uniform on the hook for the first time in 9 years, and the empty gap where it usually hung made her hand hesitate at the door. The rented house smelled like charcoal and something sweeter underneath, the smell of a plan. Kayla opened the door before she knocked. Jet black wig now, phone already up, red dot in the corner of the screen. She's here, Kayla said. Not to Brianna, to the phone. To the 400 people watching the phone. Put it down. It's just my story. Kayla walked backward into the living room, keeping Brianna framed. Say hi, everybody. This is my sister, the businesswoman. The living room had been staged. Brianna saw it the way she now saw every room, professionally, at a glance. The good church coat draped over the chair arm where a guest would notice it. The pill bottles lined on the coffee table, arranged, labels out. A shut-off notice from the electric company set square in the middle like a centerpiece. Nobody left a shut-off notice on a coffee table. You put it in a drawer with the others and you paid it. This one was on display. Denise came from the kitchen, wiping hands that were not wet. There's my girl. The arms opened. Brianna stepped into them and felt the old machinery start, the warmth that ran on a timer. Sit, sit. Kayla, put the phone down. This is family. Kayla did not put the phone down. She sat on the arm of the sofa and angled it. How's Grandma? Brianna stayed standing, resting. Denise lowered herself into the chair by the coat. The medicine ran out Tuesday. The good one, the one that lets her sleep through. Pharmacy wants 200 and change, and I said, well. She picked up a pill bottle, turned it, set it down. I said we'd manage. We always manage. I can call the pharmacy, give them a card over the phone. I can pay it directly, right now. Something flickered across Denise's face, there and gone, the flinch of a fisherman who feels the line pull the wrong way. Direct payment was not the plan. Direct payment left no hand open on the table. They don't do it like that, Denise said. You have to be on the account. Then put me on the account. Brianna, the warmth cooled 1 degree. Why are you making this hard? A daughter wants to help her mother. She helps. She doesn't audit her. Marcus came in from the back with tongs in one hand, apron over the clean blue button-down, and stopped in the doorway to the kitchen. He looked at the coffee table. He looked at the shut-off notice standing in the middle of it. Something moved in his jaw. He said nothing, and he stayed in the doorway, and Brianna felt his silence land differently than it ever had. Not absence now, but a man holding still on the edge of a thing he had not yet decided to do. The electric's past due too, Denise went on, warming to it. And now the tears came, right on the beat, sliding without a sob to muddy them. I didn't want to say, I know you cut us down to just the light and water. I know that's what you decided. She let the word decided fall like a stone in a still pond, but the light and water is exactly what's about to get shut off. So I don't understand what your number was for, if it doesn't even cover the thing you said it covers. Because it does cover it. Brianna kept her voice level. The number I send covers this bill. If this bill is past due, the money went somewhere else. The room changed temperature. Are you calling me a thief in my own house? Denise's tears stopped as cleanly as they had started. A faucet at a valve. 9 years I stretched every dollar you ever brought through that door. And now you come in here in your little cream dress and your little company, and you call your mother a liar. I didn't say liar. You said the money went somewhere. Kayla's phone swung to Brianna's face. Everybody heard it. She thinks Mama's stealing from Grandma's medicine. Turn it off, Kayla. So you can say it with no witnesses? Brianna looked at the red dot. She thought about the 400 people, then the 4,000, then the way a clip like this traveled, the ungrateful sister, the sick grandmother, the cream dress. She thought about how she would look. Then she thought about how much of her life she had spent thinking about how she would look to people whose rent she was paying. Grandma doesn't take a $200 sleep medicine, Brianna said quietly. She takes the generic, $12. I know, because I filled it myself for 6 years before you took over the pharmacy runs. The silence had a floor to it now. Kayla's thumb hovered. Denise stood. When she stood, she was not warm and she was not crying. She was the other thing, the thing under both. And Brianna had felt it exactly once in her life, 2 winters ago, across a kitchen table, over the words, I want to open an account. Get out my house! Mama, Kayla started, because a guest leaving was not content. No, Denise did not raise her voice. She never raised her voice. That was the whole architecture of her. She wants to count. Let her count somewhere else. 9 years I fed this family on her back, and she stands in my living room and tells me what my own mother takes. She turned to the phone, to Kayla's 400, and her face rearranged into grief so fast it was almost beautiful. You see how they change. You give them everything, and the minute they get a little something, a little office, they look at you like you're a stranger with your hand out. And there it was, the sentence built for the audience, the sentence that would be the caption, the sentence that would be true to 4,000 strangers, because it sounded like every mother they had failed. Brianna felt the old pull, enormous, physical, a riptide under the floorboards. Her hand actually moved toward her bag, toward the phone in the bag, toward the app in the phone where a number sat that she could zero out in 4 taps and make all of this stop, make the voice go warm again, make the red dot go dark, make her mother's arms open on the timer one more time. She got the phone out. Her thumb found the app, the balance loaded, the transfer field opened, blank, waiting. 200 for the medicine, Denise said, watching her hands now, all the grief gone quiet, the way water goes quiet when it finds the drain, and the electric, and the phone, Kayla's phone, it's about to. How much? Brianna's voice had gone flat and far away, the voice of the machine, the family ATM, that nobody asked if it was tired. Whatever's right. Denise sat back down, satisfied, the coat sliding half off the chair arm behind her. You know what's right. You always did. Brianna's thumb hovered over the field. She could feel her own pulse in the dead pad of her right thumb, the one the bleach had scrubbed smooth 2 winters ago, the thumb with no print, the thumb that had held a mop in a boardroom longer than Roe had held a title. She looked at the number in the field she had not typed yet. She looked at the shut-off notice standing at attention on the coffee table. She looked at Kayla's red dot. Then she looked at the doorway, and Marcus was still there, tongs down at his side, and he was looking at her the way a man looks at someone drowning within his reach when he has already decided he cannot swim. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His hand tightened on the tongs and loosened. 9 years, and something behind his eyes came all the way up to the surface and stood there, trembling, and still it did not become words, because the habit of not speaking in that house was older and stronger than the man. Brianna typed the number. Not the number she meant to. Her thumb, on its own, on 9 years of muscle, entered nearly the whole balance. Everything the first invoice had cleared, the margin she had bled the blue house on her knees to earn, the account that was supposed to be hers, just for her, at last. The riptide had it. She watched the digits fill the field and felt something in her chest go loose, and grateful, God help her, grateful. The way she had told Sihyuk she would be, the longer leash, the gentler owner, the same drowning in nicer water. Her thumb moved to confirm. Good girl, Denise breathed. The 2 words landed wrong. They landed exactly as they had landed 1,000 mornings across the kitchen table, and something in Brianna heard them from the outside for the first time, heard the timer in them, the transaction, the reward dispensed to the machine that had performed. Good girl, not thank you, not I love you. Good girl, the thing you say to a thing that did what you needed. Her thumb stopped a millimeter above the screen. Say it again, Brianna said. Denise blinked. What? What you called me. Say it again. Brianna, don't start. Because I want to hear it one more time before I send you everything I have. Her voice did not shake. That was the strange part, the part she would remember. It did not shake at all. I want to hear exactly what 9 years is worth. Say good girl one more time. Kayla's phone had gone very quiet. Even the red dot seemed to hold its breath. Denise recovered fast. She always recovered fast. You're being cruel now, in front of everybody, to your sick mother. Grandma takes the $12 generic. Brianna lowered the phone. She did not send it. She did not delete the number either. She let it sit in the field, loaded, a gun she had chosen not to fire, and she would think later about how that was the real change, not the not paying, but the choosing. The electric's on auto-pay from the number I already send. I set it up in March so it could never get shut off. That notice on your table is from before I did it. You saved it. You've been saving a shut-off notice for 2 months for a Sunday like this one. Denise's mouth opened. Say it's not true, Brianna said. Say it in front of Kayla's 400 people. Nobody said anything. Marcus's tongs hit the floor. He had not thrown them. They had simply fallen out of a hand that forgot to hold. The clatter was the loudest thing in the house. Then Kayla, because the silence was unbearable, and because content abhors a vacuum, swung the phone to her own face and said, bright and shaking, Okay, so obviously my sister's having a breakdown. This is what happens when people get a little money and forget where they came from. And the words poured out of her, rehearsed and desperate, sell out and fake, and thinks she's better than us. The whole rant she had clearly been building for 2 weeks in the group chat, now finding its stage. Brianna let her finish. She stood in the middle of the staged living room, cream dress, dead thumb, loaded phone, and she let her sister call her every name for the camera, and she felt the humiliation of it settle over her like cold water, real and total. 4,000 strangers about to decide she was the villain of a story her mother had written the set for. When Kayla finally ran out of breath, Brianna said only, "Are you done? Are you gonna pay Grandma's medicine or not? I already pay it, $12. On the account you don't know about because you never once asked what the account was, only what the number was." She looked at her sister, 24, phone up, wig black, the whole apparatus. "You never asked how I got a single dollar. 9 years. Not once. You asked how much." She put the phone in her bag. The number was still in the field. She did not send it. She did not need to delete it. She could carry a loaded thing now and not fire it. That was new, and it terrified her more than the riptide had. "I'm going," she said. "You walk out that door," Denise said, rising, the church coat sliding all the way to the floor now, forgotten. "You don't come back, you understand me? Not for Christmas, not when I'm sick, not when your father—" She stopped, recalibrated. "You'll get nothing from this family, and you'll deserve nothing." Brianna looked at the coat on the floor and the notice on the table, and the pills arranged with their labels out, and she looked, last, at Marcus, who had picked up neither the tongs nor the courage, who stood in the doorway of his own kitchen, with his hands empty, and his eyes full and his mouth shut. "Daddy," she said. "Just that." He looked at her. His lips moved. She watched him get almost all the way to a word. She would swear later she saw the shape of her own name start to form. And then Denise said, "Marcus, the grill," without turning around, and he closed his mouth, and he went back through the doorway toward the smoke, and the last Brianna saw of her father that Sunday was his back. She drove down the mountain that was not a mountain, the flat, cracked streets of home, and she did not cry until the third light, and when she cried it was not clean. It was the ugly kind, the kind that asks questions. What if she was wrong? What if the notice was real? What if the medicine was real? What if a daughter who counts is exactly the monster her mother had just broadcast to 4,000 people? What if independence was just a prettier word for abandoning the people who made you, and the cream dress was just a costume, and Grace was wrong, and Sehyuk's doors led nowhere but into a room where you sat alone with your own money and no one to give it to? The phone buzzed in the bag. The group chat. She could see the notifications stacking through the mesh pocket, Kayla's clip already posted, the comments already coming, and she knew without looking that the internet had decided that somewhere a stranger was typing, "Imagine treating your own mother like that," and that the stranger was, in the only way that would ever reach 4,000 people, right. She pulled over. She sat with the engine ticking. She took out the phone. The transfer field was still open, the near whole balance still typed in it, waiting, one tap from making the voice go warm again. She looked at it a long time. Then, at the curb, alone, humiliated, broadcast, cut off, with her father's back still burning behind her eyes, and no way she could see to ever be the good girl and the free woman at the same time, Brianna did the smallest thing. The only thing left to a person at the bottom, the thing that is not victory and is not surrender, but is the last inch of ground a person can still choose to stand on. She did not send it. She did not delete it. She turned the phone face down on the passenger seat, put the car in drive, and pulled back onto the road, carrying the loaded number all the way up the mountain, not knowing yet what she would do with it, knowing only that the choice would be hers, and that for the first time, The not choosing was itself a choice, and it held. The invitation went out on a Tuesday. 3 lines, no warmth wasted. Dinner, Sunday. The house on the mountain where she cleaned. Brianna typed the address into the group chat and watched the 3 dots start and stop under her mother's name for a full minute. Then Denise wrote back one word. Finally. As if the mountain had always been owed to her. Brianna set the phone down and looked at the number still sitting in the transfer field, untouched since the drive up. She did not send it. She changed it instead, down to a figure she chose, a last month of help and no more, and left her thumb off the screen a beat longer than she needed to. The choice held. It had held for 4 days now. Sunday came with a low sky. Grace met her in the mudroom at 3, already in the black and white uniform, the one with the crisp apron and the discreet collar, the one Brianna had worn up this mountain for years. "You sure about the dress under it?" Grace said. Not a question either. Brianna pulled the apron strings tight over the cream dress and knotted them at the small of her back. They need to see the uniform first. They need to see what they think they're seeing. Grace looked at her for a moment. Then they see the rest. Then they see the rest. The car came up the private road at 4. Brianna watched it from the east window, counting without meaning to. 90 seconds, gate to house. The old habit. Marcus drove, hunched forward over the wheel in a way that told her his back was bad again. Denise sat straight in the passenger seat in her church coat, chin lifted, already composing her face for a house she believed she was about to inherit access to. Kayla was in the back with her phone up against the window, filming the approach. Brianna opened the front door herself. The front door. The one she had never once walked through in 9 years of coming here. Because a girl who cleans does not make an arrival. She made an arrival. She stood in the wide stone entry in the uniform, apron and all, and let her mother's eyes do the work. Denise crossed the threshold and swept the room, the glass, the stone, the light falling 40 feet down the far wall, and something greedy and satisfied settled into the lines around her mouth. Her daughter, in the apron, holding the door, the order of the world confirmed. "So this is it," Denise said. She did not lower her voice. "This is what's been keeping you so busy you can't answer your mother." She set her purse on the console table by the door, like she was setting down a claim. Kayla drifted past Brianna into the room with the phone up, red dot live, narrating in a low stream to whoever was watching. "Y'all, this house is insane. This is where she been the whole time." "Turn it off," Brianna said. Kayla did not turn it off. Denise had already spotted Grace at the edge of the room, standing quiet by the long dining table in her uniform. She lifted 2 fingers the way you summon staff. "Sweetheart, could we get some water? It's a long drive up." Grace looked at Brianna. 1 beat. "I'll get it," Brianna said. She walked the length of the room, filled a glass at the sideboard, and carried it back on a small tray. She held it out to her mother in the apron, the maid's tray steady in the maid's hands, and let Denise take it, and drink, and never once feel the floor moving under her. "Good," Denise said, satisfied, and that was when Sehyuk came down the stairs. He came without hurry, in a charcoal suit, collar open, the coiled tattoo just visible at the left of his neck when he turned his head. Marcus straightened by the door. Kayla's narration trailed off mid-word. Denise turned with the water glass still in her hand, already arranging a smile for the owner of the house, the employer, the man who would surely want to thank her for raising such a hard-working girl. Sehyuk crossed the room. He did not look at Denise. He looked at Brianna, took the tray from her hands and set it on the table, and kissed her. Not quickly, in front of all of them. The water glass came down on the console harder than Denise meant it to. He stepped back half a step, one hand still at Brianna's waist, and finally turned to the family. "Kwon Si-hyuk," he said. "You've been living in a house she paid for. I wanted to see the people who let her. Silence took the room the way water takes a low field. Denise found her voice first, because Denise always found her voice first. I don't, Brianna, what is this? What is he? He's not my boss, Brianna said. Her own voice came out level, and the levelness surprised even her. He hasn't been my boss in a long time. You're with. Kayla had lowered the phone without realizing it. You're with him? For a year. Brianna let that land. I said yes on one condition, that you would never know who he was. Denise's eyes moved to the tattoo, to the suit, to the 40-foot wall of glass, and Brianna watched the arithmetic run behind them, watched her mother recalculate the size of the thing she had been standing next to all these years and mistaking for a girl who cleaned. Why? Denise breathed. Why would you hide? Because of exactly the face you're making right now. Denise's face did the thing Brianna had been describing before she could stop it. The greed and the hurt fighting for the same muscles, neither of them winning. She looked from her daughter to the man to the tattoo again, and Brianna watched her mother try to find the angle, the opening, the soft place to press, the way she had found it every Sunday for 9 years. There was no soft place here. The room was all glass and stone, and there was nothing in it that belonged to Denise, not even the girl. Grace stepped forward then, unhurried, and picked up the tray from the table. She carried it toward the kitchen, and the movement pulled every eye, because she was wearing the uniform, and Brianna was not doing the work, and the picture would not resolve. She works here, Brianna said, nodding after Grace. Grace, she started months ago. I haven't cleaned this house since before the spring. She untied the apron strings at her back, slow, and lifted the apron over her head, and the cream dress came out from under it, fitted, gold at the heels, gold at her throat. She folded the apron once over her arm. I don't work here. I nearly live here. Kayla's mouth was open. You've been letting us think. I let you think what you wanted to think. You never asked me anything else. Brianna set the folded apron on the back of a chair. You never asked me one question that wasn't a number. Denise's hand had gone to her chest, over the church coat, the old gesture, the one that came before the tears came. After everything you stood there and let me ask you for water in your own. It's not my house, Brianna said. And you didn't ask me for water. You told the maid to fetch it. You've been telling the maid to fetch it for 9 years. Today the maid was me on purpose, so you'd see your own hand doing it. That was when Marcus moved. He had been standing by the door the whole time, cap in his hands, saying nothing, the weathered stoop of him folded into the corner of all that glass. Now he crossed the room slower than any of them, reached into the inside pocket of his good blue button-down, and took out an envelope. It was thick and soft-cornered from being carried a long time. He set it on the dining table without a word, and stepped back from it, the way a man steps back from something he has finished carrying. Marcus, Denise said sharply, what is that? He looked at his daughter. His eyes did the thing they had done for 2 years without ever reaching his mouth, and this time it reached his mouth. It's hers, he said. Been hers. I put a little by every check I could, since the back went. In her name, where your mother couldn't find it to spend it. His voice cracked on the last of it, and he let it crack. It ain't much against what you gave, but it's the only money in that house that ever went toward you instead of out of you. Brianna picked up the envelope. She did not open it. She pressed her thumb against the dead pad of it, the finger the bleach had erased 2 winters back, and felt nothing there, the way she always felt nothing there, and held the envelope against her chest anyway. Daddy, she said. I should have set it on the table a long time ago. He looked at Denise when he said it. I should have set a lot of things on the table. Denise's mouth opened and closed. For the first time in the memory of anyone in that room, she had nothing loaded. The envelope on the table was money that had moved toward her daughter instead of away from her, and there was no list in the world that could account for it. No number she could underline, no water she could send someone to fetch. She looked at her husband as though he had come apart in her hands. Kayla had recovered enough to reach for the only weapon she had. "So you found a rich man," she said it loud. For the phone, even though the phone had gone dark. For the room, for herself. That's what this is. 9 years crying poor, and you had a hole. You picked a rich man over your own family. Brianna turned to her sister. "I spent 9 years picking family over myself." She said it without heat, which was worse than heat. "Every Friday, every dollar. I picked you over an account with my own name on it. I picked the roof you paid me to fix 3 times, and Ruiz fixed once. I picked your phone bill 19 times. I never once picked a man. I finally picked me, and you can't tell the difference between those two things, and that is the whole reason we're standing here." Denise's tears came then, real ones this time, or a performance so old it had fused to the bone. Brianna could no longer tell, and had stopped needing to. "So this is how it ends. You cut us off, you stand in his house in his dress, and you cut your mother off." "The money's over," Brianna said. "Not because he told me to, because I decided, in my time, my way." She let the words settle. "I sent one last month this morning, a number I chose. After that, nothing goes down that mountain that I don't choose, one thing at a time, if I choose it at all." She looked at Seahook when she said the last of it, and he was standing exactly where he had said he would stand a year ago on the terrace. Behind her, not in front. His hand was not on the situation at all. He had crossed the room once, for the kiss, to put the truth in the room where it could not be unseen, and then he had stepped back and left the rest to her, because the rest was hers. Denise gathered her coat and her purse. "We're leaving. Marcus, we're leaving." Marcus did not move from beside his daughter. "Marcus, I'll find my own way down," he said. The drive back down the mountain took Denise and Kayla in one car and left the third seat empty, and Brianna stood in the doorway and watched the taillights count themselves down the private road until the gate swallowed them. The weeks after did not arrive with music. There was no scene where the family knelt. Denise did not call to apologize because Denise did not have the machinery for it. The silence she had used as a weapon for 9 years became the only thing she had left, and now it cost her instead of her daughter. She stayed in the rented house with the shut-off notices she no longer needed to stage, resentful, stripped of the one lever that had ever worked, and Brianna let her keep the resentment because it was hers to keep. The atelier grew. The blue house had cleared. The other 5 followed, lease by lease, invoice by invoice, Rowe signing the quality line every quarter and finding nothing to catch. Brianna hired the second woman off the same agency Grace had come from, then a third, women who had carried linens into rooms their whole lives and never once been asked to price them. Grace ran the training floor. "There she is," she said. The first morning, a new hire priced a turnover correctly, and it was the same thing she had said to Brianna in the library the day she stopped bringing the uniform up the mountain. Kayla called in the fall, not a live stream. A phone call, late, her voice small in a way Brianna had not heard since they were girls sharing a room. She did not ask for money, she asked for a job. "I'll pay for the training," Brianna said. "The course, the certificate, all of it. And then you apply. Same form as everyone, same interview. If Grace says yes, you're in. If she says no, you're not." A pause. "I'm not handing you a chair. I'll pay for you to learn how to stand up. That's the last thing I'll pay for that isn't a paycheck." Kayla was quiet a long time. "That's not the same as helping me." "No," Brianna agreed. "It's better. You just can't tell yet." Marcus rebuilt it slowly, the way he did everything. one board at a time. He came up the mountain on Sundays sometimes, sat on the east terrace with his coffee gone cold in his hands, the way Si-hyuk's always was, and the two men talked less than any two men Brianna had ever seen and seemed to understand each other perfectly. The envelope she never spent. She put it in an account with her own name on it, the account she had asked for 2 winters back and been given 3 days of silence for, and she left his money in it untouched, because some money you keep not to use but to remember who put it there. It was on the same terrace, when the gold had come back to the corners of the light, that Si-hyuk asked her the second question of their life. Not to be his woman, that one she had answered a year ago. He asked her for the permanent version, the whole life, and he asked it the way he asked everything, quiet, once, and then still. "Yes," she said, "I keep the company." "You keep the company," he agreed, as if there had never been any other shape the answer could take. She had brought the uniform up with her that day, the black and white one, the second one, bought on layaway in the dark, so it would never become a line on her mother's list. She did not throw it out. She folded it, corners square, the way she folded everything now that folding was a thing she was paid for and not a thing that was taken from her, and she set it on the high shelf in the closet of the house she nearly lived in, not to wear, to keep, so that on the mornings the light came in gold and easy, she would remember the mornings it had not, and remember which of them she had chosen and which had been taken, and remember that the difference between those two things was the whole of her life. For 9 years they called her sacrifice and obligation. The moment Brianna chose her own life, they discovered they'd never had any right to it at all. If you want to watch all the stories without any ads and also get access to bonus scenes, extended epilogues, and exclusive spicy chapters, head over to our Patreon. Scan the QR code on the screen. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment. See you there. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever handed over almost everything you earned to people who only asked how much was left? When you finally stopped paying, did they call your dignity a betrayal, the way Brianna's family did the moment the money slowed? And when you chose your own life for the first time, did they act as if they'd always owned it? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all, and if you believe in stories about dignity, self-worth, and awakening, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.